The following is a special presentation of the Decibel Geek podcast. This is the Decibel Geek podcast with Chris Czynszak and Aaron Camaro.
Gather round. It's that all-important time once again, time for the Decibel Geek podcast. This is the podcast that will stand up and fight for your right to rock. And we're going to do it right here today. My name is Aaron Camaro, joined as always by my good brother, Chris Czynszak. What's going on, man?
Not much. Excited to talk to our guest today. I can't believe we've never had him on the show before, but we're going to change that this week.
Yeah, definitely. It's about time. But yeah, we're going to talk to Ron Keel about all kinds of different stuff. It's going to be awesome. But I think the most important thing, and we started talking about this from what I can remember this last Friday night, but Rocknpod 2021, it's official.
Yes, it is. God willing.
So we got dates announced, we've got location announced, we've got some guests announced. Chris, why don't you fill us in? Give us the quick rundown of where we're at so far with Rocknpod 2021.
All right, well, I guess most important is the dates. Rocknpod will be, the weekend of Rocknpod will be August 6th through 8th this year in Nashville, as always, and doing it at the Hilton Nashville Airport this time. And got a few guests already announced, but yeah, tickets are on sale. Discounted hotel rooms are on sale. I'm being super transparent this year. The way that the event survives is if you book through our hotel link, because those hotel rooms cover our venue space. So please consider booking through the hotel link. But yeah, we've got tickets, VIPs. We got podcaster registration up with a discount if you stay at the hotel, and all that good stuff's going on. You can sign up for the newsletter. And some of the guests we've announced so far, obviously Ron Keel, who we're having on today, and we'll go into a little bit of Rocknpod stuff with him. Don Jameson, the comedian from That Metal Show. Yeah. Tommy Skio from Resist and Bite, and of course formerly of Tesla. And the whole band Resist and Bite will be at the expo, but more importantly, they will be playing the Rocknpod pre-party concert the night before, along with a rare hair set and probably another act to be named soon. That's going to be exciting. Still working on the venue for that, but that's going to be the lineup, and really excited to see Tommy's band play, because I just finished a new record, and I'm thinking it might be out by that time, but even if it's not, you'll get to hear tracks from that record live, so that'll be cool.
And if you weren't at previous years and you don't know, our good friend Tyson Leslie does the Rare Hair. That's basically an all-star jam, and there's going to be a lot of all-stars that we can witness jamming that night that are going to be in Nashville. Oh, yeah. I mean, it'll be a rotating band of pro players that are here in Nashville, and then also several of the expo guests will get up and they'll do all kinds of cool hard rock and metal covers, and definitely several deep tracks. It's not going to be like a top 40 set. It's like if you're listening to this show, you like the deep tracks and you want to hear stuff that's off the beaten path. So it'll be a special night for sure. It'll be a great show. Right, and like Chris was saying, it's very important to help out the Rocknpod Expo. The best way you can do that to make sure that future generations, heck, 2022 even, we can enjoy Rocknpod again, is to make sure you get a room at the hotel, because for one, it's awesome because it's convenient. Everything's going on at that hotel. So while you're there. You can check out everything. If you want to have a beer with Ron Keel, you could probably do that, because everybody's hanging out at the hotel bar and is running around all over the place. So if you want to be at the party and stay at the party, you get that hotel room, and you are contributing to the future of Rocknpod, and we appreciate it. If you're a podcaster out there, or if you listen to a podcast that's about rock and roll and you want them to be a part of Rocknpod, you can steer them this way too. I know there's a lot of great ones out there that we've not had at Rocknpod with us in the past that we'd like to have with us this year. So if you got somebody you like and you'd like to see them at Rocknpod, go ahead and let them know. So where do people get their hotel rooms, their registration, and all that good stuff?
You can go to rocknpod.com or Nashville rocknpodexpo.com. Each one will take you to the same thing, and there's tabs at the top. There's news stories, there's tickets, there's a list of guests, there's a podcasters tab where you can pick your level of of podcast registration and get on the list for that. And we'll also have the education track again this year. If you want to start a podcast, you can register at the low tier on podcaster registration and get access to that. It'll be speakers presenting ways to start a podcast, gear you can buy, ways to grow your audience, ways to market your podcast, ways to monetize your podcast, all that good stuff. There's an education track tab. There's a vendors tab. If you sell vinyl records, memorabilia, you want to come and sell your stuff at the expo, click on that vendors tab. And the big one is the hotel tab. Click on that. You'll see an orange button when you get on there, and click on that. It takes you right to our room block, and you can book your room.
That's right. Let's all party together in 2021. We're kicking it all off. Life goes back to normal after Rocknpod. So we're getting ready for that big party this summer. We can't wait to see everybody there with us. So cool. You know, Decibel Geek, we are part of the pantheon of podcasting. Yeah, that's right. Pantheon Podcast. And we're very proud of that fact. And you know what? There's perks to that, isn't there, Chris?
Yeah, I'm using a brand new set of AKG headphones and microphone, and that was all thanks to their support of Pantheon as a sponsor, and they're supporting the show in turn with that.
Very cool. See, there's perks to all this. So we got a lot to get to today. We're going to hang out and shoot the breeze with Ron Keel for a little bit, but let's take care of our business real fast. I got a review, and it's a good one. It's entitled Excellent, and it's got all 5 stars. It goes like this: great show. Let's have an episode about greatest first albums, like No Respect by Vane, or the first Firehouse record. Not a bad idea.
We haven't done that, have we?
No, we never have. As many different angles as we've tacked rock and roll from, we've never done that one. So, yeah, let's look forward to that one in the future. And then we can come back and do, like, best second albums.
Yeah, we could do that, too. Yeah,
that's a good one, too.
I do like No Respect by Vane, and I do like the first Firehouse record.
Oh, I love that Vane album.
Not the Firehouse?
Not so much. Not as much as I love these awesome podcast reviews. That one comes to us via Apple Podcasts from right here in the good old USA, from Cool as Ice 232, a.k.a. Patrick. Thank you, sir. We appreciate that very much. That is an awesome review. If you want to leave your favorite podcast a review, just do it. You can go to Apple Podcasts. You can go to Podchaser. You can even leave us a Facebook recommendation. If it's good and it's awesome and it's got all 5 stars, we're going to read it on the show because we like to do that. Another good way you can help us out, you want a little extra Decibel Geek in your life, you can become a Decibel Geek VIP by going over to patreon.com and looking up Decibel Geek. There's different levels of commitment in there. What you can get is the Chris and Aaron Show, which is an entirely different podcast separate from what we do here. There's well over 100 shows at this point, and you can go back to the very beginning. Gives you a whole bunch of extra Decibel Geek in your life just right where you need it, in your ear holes where it belongs. So head on over to patreon.com. Check out Decibel Geek, become a VIP. Hey, Chris, did you happen to load up that latest episode of Torpedo Dudes yet?
Did you know we do an awesome live stream on Friday night? Let's talk about that.
I don't want to talk about that. We've talked enough last Friday night.
I think we talked enough for everybody last Friday night.
Oh, man, that was something. All 3 of us, myself, Chris, and yes, even our mascot who we love, Rockin' Ron Runyon, we all had long weeks last week, so by the time Friday rolled around and we did our weekly live cast, I guess you want to call it, Decibel Geek Friday Night Live, we decided we were going to get hammered.
We did.
And so we did.
I don't even remember like the last 30 minutes of the show.
Oh, man. I went back to it later and listened back to it because I couldn't remember much of it either. Yeah, we get a little weird.
Fueled by alcohol.
And we laugh a lot. A lot of laughing on that one. So, you know what? That was probably the most fun one I think we've done so far. Maybe we should just get shit-faced every time we do it.
Yeah, I think that's probably the prescription for every week going forward. A lot of great feedback on it.
You guys had me laughing so hard that night. And yeah, I've had a lot of people message me going, that is some funny shit right there.
It was a belligerent fun fest.
Most definitely. So there you have it. Check us out on Check us out on Patreon if you want to become a Decibel Geek VIP. Get your room reserved for Rocknpod 2021 right now. Get yourself a Decibel Geek t-shirt at clickteeshop.com. That's clickteeshop with a K. Yep. And, get on over to Pantheon Podcast and give them a like and say thank you for supporting my boys, the Decibel Geek Podcast. We got more people we love.
Yes. These are the people that share on Facebook and retweet on Twitter. Last week's fun New York rock show with our special guest, Tony Mann. That was fun. I loved having Tony on the show.
He was awesome. Yeah, Tony's got some great stories. I can't wait to get him back on.
Sure. So Geeks of the Week this week are Adam Cox, Sneed Rock, Keith Rockford, Simon Catt, Wayne Cross, Pantheon Podcast, Mike Parnell, David Glenn, Shay Hargett, The Bakery Podcast, Aaron Baker, Sit and Spin with Joe, Mark Alden Taylor, Freeform Rock Podcast, Mark and Jerry B's Sessions, Cobras and Fire Podcast, Kristen Schimbeck, Scott Crouch, David Cathy, and as always,
the Mooger Fooger. All right, there you have it. If you want to become a Geek of the Week, just like these fine folks did last week, you share this week's episode, our conversation with Ron Keel, and next week, you'll hear your name at the top of the show because you'll be a Geek of the Week.
I think I'm going to have a lot of names to read next week.
Probably. That's usually the way it works. Everybody loves Ron Keel.
We do too. Let's talk to him.
Let's do it. Well, Ron, we had such an awesome time with you at the second Rocknpod? Was it year 2? Yeah. And Chris and I were sitting down talking the other day about some of the stuff we want to do, and we both said, we never had Ron Keel on the show. We got to spend time with him at Rocknpod and had a great time with him and got up on stage and talked with Michael Wagner and all that. But it's time for Ron Keel to come on the Decibel Geek podcast. We've been slacking, man. How are you doing?
I am doing great. It's long overdue, and I appreciate the opportunity. You guys are at the very pinnacle of the rock and roll podcast industry, and you're right. It's about damn time that I appeared on the show, and I appreciate the opportunity, man. We're going to have a good time tonight.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, so I wanted to kind of go back a little. Well, we were talking amongst ourselves before we got you on the line. You had posted a thing about coming to Rocknpod this year, and we're excited for that. But like you had mentioned, I'm coming home, and somebody in the comments was like, I didn't know you were from Nashville, and I think you said you were from like Ohio or Indiana, but your wiki page says you're from Savannah, Georgia. So where are you from, Ron?
Well, we're I'm from Earth, actually. I moved to Nashville in 1979 when I was just a teenager, and it is certainly one of my hometowns where I put down some serious roots and had some great experiences and memories. So it's great to come home to Nashville. I do have some other hometowns, as many people know. Hollywood. I spent 10 years in Hollywood in the decade of decadence in the 80s.
Yeah.
Spent a lot of time in Nashville, Tennessee. 10 years in Vegas as well. But Nashville is and always will be one of my hometowns and one of those places where my career really got started with a band called Steeler.
That's right. Yeah, so 1979, Nashville was a much different place back in those days. Can you describe like your experience of what you thought of Nashville back in those days? And because it's really like a rock and roll mecca now, but back then it was definitely straight up country music, and like a rock scene was. Although a rock scene did really develop thanks to Steeler and several other bands in those days, but Nashville in '79 it was a long way off from being really a rock and roll town, right?
A long way off. By the way, it was Country Music USA at the time. I went there, and the story about my move to Nashville is probably well documented, but I'd love to reiterate that briefly if I could. I was in Texas, in Mount Pleasant, Texas, 118 miles east of Dallas, in the summer of winter of '79, doing a construction job. And back then, we didn't have the Google. You had a phone book, all right? And I'm looking through the phone book, and that was our source for whatever, businesses that you wanted to get in contact with. And I'm looking through the phone book in Mount Pleasant, Texas, and I saw the Dallas listings for, quote, record companies, unquote. And I thought, record companies. There's record companies in Dallas. Shit, I want a record deal. So I started calling them. At the top of the list, I started with Arista and A&M, and I started at the A's. Yeah. And I'd call them up and I'd say, "Hey, I'm Ron Keel. I'm 17 years old at the time, guys. I'd call these record companies up in Dallas. Go, I'm Ron Keel. I've got a demo, and I'm a singer, songwriter, musician. I'd like to have a record deal." And the secretary would say, "Well, we're just a distribution point. We don't really have any A&R here." A&R, which is artist and repertoire, which is the people that actually sign artists and acts.
Right.
Sorry, we can't help you. And I'd go down to the list to the next one, and I called them all until I got to MCA. And I called MCA. It said the same thing, same pitch. "This is Ron Keel. I'm a singer, songwriter, musician. I've got a demo I'd like to play for you. I'd really like a record deal." And the secretary says, "Hold on." And she put me in touch with a guy named Brad Hunt. And I gave him the same pitch. He said, "Meet me in my office, 4:00 on Thursday." And this was, I'm 120 miles away. I went to his office. I'm 17 years old. I've got a business suit on, a demo package with 4 songs that I'd written and played all the instruments on: drums, bass, guitar, vocals, the whole thing. It was my package. 8x10 color photos of myself playing live. And I put all this stuff on his desk and I said, "I want a record deal." And he looked at the stuff and he listened to the demo and he said, "I can't help you because this is just a distribution point. We just ship records. But I know somebody who can." And he got on the phone right then and there, that very minute. He called Leon Tasilis at MCA Records in Nashville. He says, "Leon, I got this kid in my office right now, and he's going to be a star someday. His name's Ron Keel. Can you help him out?" And Leon said, "Yeah, send him to Nashville." And they sent me to Nashville. I did a demo, and they passed on me because my music was too heavy for Nashville in the 70s, the late 70s. But I looked around, and I saw that vibrant Music City energy in every building. I rented a house on Music Row, and I saw this vibrant music scene, which was totally devoid of rock. I started going to concerts, and I saw Rush and Saxon and Van Halen at the Municipal Auditorium there in Nashville, and there were 10, 12, 15,000 people in the arena just digging the rock. Yeah. But there was no local scene for that, and I thought there's a chance that if I could stake my claim in rock and roll here in Nashville, that I might be able to get noticed. And I did with a band called Lust, which won the Battle of the Bands competition in 1980 and released my first commercial recording with an album called the Homegrown Album, sponsored by KDF Radio in Nashville. And all of a sudden, I mean, we were on the radio. We were playing for packed houses with fists in the air, and that gave me the inertia to form and create a band called Steeler, and the rest is history.
Wow. Speaking of Lust, like we booked a band called 8 Ball to play our pre-party a couple years ago. And the singer of that band, David Bush, I think took over vocal duties for you when you left the band to start Steeler.
That is correct. David Bush is a fantastic singer, great guy, and certainly applaud his efforts that he's kept that rock and roll flag waving in Nashville. And of course, now Nashville is the new Hollywood. Yeah. It's where all of my peers and contemporaries and friends and fellow musicians and singers have relocated to. But I was the first, man. In the 70s, I made that move to Nashville. I moved back in 2001 and spent 6 years there from 2001 to 2007 until I moved to Vegas, and still have a lot of great memories and a lot of good friends there in Nashville, Music City. Can't wait to come back for Rocknpod 2021.
And I was going to bring up our good friend Robert Bentley, who is a great Gene Simmons impersonator. Told me that he actually roomed with you back in the early days here in Nashville.
I'll take his word for it.
So you didn't get a chance to meet him at Rocknpod?
I'm not sure, man. I'm not sure.
There's the black dude dressed up like Gene Simmons. He's a real skinny guy, and he, but yeah, he's played in bands around here for a long time. But yeah, he mentioned that you worked at you were working in a restaurant back in those days and trying to make it in music in the early days.
I worked at a restaurant called the Sailmaker on Harding Road. That was my first. That was the job that kept me alive in the early Steeler days. Making minimum wage. I think it was $2.15 an hour back then.
Wow.
And walking to work barefoot uphill both ways. But some great memories, man. I was the dishwasher at the restaurant, so
yep.
I would get back behind the Hobart dishwashing machine and sing my ass off and work all day long, but I'm singing. Every dish I broke, I would sing along. And great memories and great friendships that I formed during those days in my early years in Nashville. Before we relocated to L.A., we realized pretty early on, after doing some big shows at the Tennessee Theater and at the fair, and Steeler was an apple tree in a cornfield. Steeler was the motley crew of Nashville, and we were getting a lot of attention, getting a lot of notoriety. And I realized that we've got to take this somewhere else because the music business in Nashville isn't going to give us the opportunities that we deserve or that we want. So I moved the entire band and crew to Los Angeles / Hollywood in 1981, and the rest is history. I mean, we went on to make LA Hollywood history and become one of those cornerstone foundation bands of that 80s rock scene in Hollywood. But like I said, Nashville will always be home, and so many great memories and so many great friendships that I still enjoy there. I can't wait to get back.
Yeah. So did you, any particular clubs you remember playing when you were here? And that was like, I'm sure Cannery was probably one of them. No, that didn't exist then. No.
Oh, it didn't. No, Cantrell's was the first gig we did, a place called Cantrell's. Mm-hmm. And I don't have the address in front of me, but it does not exist anymore. But coming up in a couple of weeks, man, February 17th, 2021 will be the 40th anniversary of the first ever Steelers show, and that was at Cantrell's in Nashville, Tennessee. I do have the flyer. I'm going to post that on my social media and Spike the Football a little bit to celebrate that milestone, man. I didn't think I would live to be 40, much less celebrate the 40th anniversary of Steeler. Are you kidding me? So I'm really proud of that milestone. We're going to be celebrating the 40th anniversary of Steeler all year long.
That's really cool. So here you would have been a big fish in a small pond as far as, you had the local following and all that, but you knew in order to make it, you couldn't do it in Nashville.
Well, there's a couple of big decisions that I've made during my career that turned out to be really, really correct. One was heading to Hollywood in 81. I'd like to claim that I was some business marketing genius that thought, we need to get this band to Hollywood. But the truth is that I was married to a Tennessee girl there and got divorced, and I just wanted to go as far west as I possibly could until I got to the ocean. I just wanted to get away from that woman. And wow. I realized that's kind of true, but it's kind of true. I just wanted to get the hell out of town and make a new start after my first marriage. But I also saw this revolution happening in Europe with bands like Iron Maiden, Saxon, Def Leppard, the new wave of British heavy metal, so to speak, and Judas Priest and Scorpions were obviously big influences on us at the time, and Steeler. And I realized that there is something happening, and we need to get to a major rock mecca, whether it's New York or L.A., and my instinct told me to go to Hollywood. I had a mentor when I was a teenager who had always encouraged me to go west, young man, really just telling me you need to get to California. You need to get to L.A. and Hollywood and stake your claim and make your stand, so to speak. And at the time in Nashville, it's just one of those influences or impulses that told me we've got to get to Hollywood. And we did. When we got to Hollywood in 1981, the fall of 81, October of 81, we were searching for a gig. We were the outsiders. We were the Nashville guys. We were the country boys, the outsiders. And it was very tough to break into that Hollywood scene. We couldn't get a gig at the Whiskey. We did a couple of gigs at the Troubadour on Santa Monica Boulevard in Hollywood, but you couldn't break into Gazzarri's or the Whiskey. They were all very loyal to bands like Rat and Dubrow, Quiet Riot before it was Quiet Riot. Bands like Rat, Crew, and so forth. And it took us probably 9 months of playing the outer perimeter, Pasadena, San Fernando Valley, Orange County, playing all the outside areas outside of Hollywood and building a fan base and a mailing list. And then when we finally got the opportunity to play in Hollywood at the Whiskey on a Monday night, we sold the place out and packed it. And that was due to all of our fans that came from all of those outlying areas and all the promotion that we had done with the fans in Pasadena and Orange County and San Fernando Valley. They all came and converged on the Whiskey on a Monday night. We sold the place out, and that put Steeler on the map and really got my career started in Hollywood.
Right on. That's awesome.
Wow. But then, the band would change. Like, it would wind up being just you from the guys that made the move out there. What led to the rest of the guys going back?
Well, the band was pretty solid for a long time until, it was a couple of years that led to the personnel changes. And I'll take the rap for that. It's my bad. I think the band that moved to L.A. and moved to Hollywood was a very special combination and a brotherhood of guys that I'm still friends with. Michael Dunnigan from Nashville, Tennessee. Robert Eva from Nashville, Tennessee. Guys that I hope to see at Rocknpod in August. And my decisions were based on the fact that I'm looking at musicians like Tommy Lee from Motley Crue, who was one of the best drummers in hard rock history. Guitarists like George Lynch, Jakey Lee. The competition at the time was extremely stiff.
Yeah.
And perhaps falsely, I became determined to have the best musicians possible. And we did. With those lineup changes, we had Yngwie Malmsteen replace Michael Dunnigan on lead guitar. Obviously, Yngwie's name and history and legacy is very well known. Mark Edwards on drums, Rick Fox on bass. Yeah. And we went on to record that classic Steeler album, which became one of the cornerstones of the foundation of that LA 80s metal scene. So I will take the rap for that. And I've discussed this with the original guys in the band, Michael Dunnigan and Robert Eva from Nashville. And I'm sorry I made the moves that I made. And perhaps if I hadn't, we would have achieved some of our goals that we moved there to LA to achieve. But I've always been driven to succeed and to make it and to make my mark in this business and in this life. And as a leader, sometimes you have to make those tough decisions to part ways with your best friend on Christmas Day sometimes. I mean, and those were tough decisions that I made.
Right.
They paid off for me in a way, and in a way I do regret some of those decisions because Yngwie Malmsteen is one of the best guitar players in the history of music. But didn't work out, man.
Right.
Didn't work out. And if I had been able to, at the age of 21, 22 years old, I'm still a kid myself. If I had been able to be the leader that I am now, I believe I could have motivated that band and gotten us to where we went to LA to be. But I was still very young and learning along the way. And I'm happy for myself and how everything turned out, and I'm happy that I still have those friendships with the guys.
Oh, cool!
That original Steeler lineup as we celebrate 40 years together, and I'll be talking to those guys on my podcast here in a couple of weeks as we celebrate the 40-year anniversary of Steeler. And luckily, they understand, and they're still my friends, and I appreciate that, because they could certainly have a different outlook on what I did and how I executed my game plan. But I did what I had to do to succeed.
Yeah. And I did an interview with Rick Fox when I was out in LA for NAMM to talk about like the Steeler album that he's on, and what an incredible record. First of all, I mean it's there's not a bum song on the whole thing. It's good. And he told me, a lot of interesting backstory on how the band came together, and some entertaining stories, obviously, of Yngwie, the Yngwie that you talked to on the phone when he was in Sweden, and the Yngwie that showed up in LA, being two quite different people. Would you agree with that?
Well, yeah, you're going to say and do whatever it takes to you're going to lie on your tax form or your job application. I mean, who doesn't?
Right.
So Yngwie was obviously a team player until he joined the team. And
right.
then, but looking back, I could have probably motivated him a little better and maybe been a team player. But the bottom line is Yngwie was a huge Ritchie Blackmore fan, and Graham Bonnet was one of his all-time singers. If Graham Bonnet, it wouldn't have mattered if Yngwie and I were best friends and we were totally bonded and writing great songs together and moving forward. If Graham Bonnet called and said, "I want you in my band," he would have quit, and I get that. I did the same thing with Black Sabbath, man. I just put together a band called Keel, and I had my own say, and I had my guys recruited as my team, and it was just the perfect situation. But then Black Sabbath called and wanted me to sing with them, and I had to tell my guys, "Hey, look, man, I'm going to go join Black Sabbath," and they understood, just like I understood when Yngwie quit to join Alcatraz with Graham Bonnet. It was one of his favorite singers who had done Serious Time with one of his favorite guitar player, Ritchie Blackmore, and the band already had a record deal, and there's no way you could begrudge anybody that opportunity if they get the chance to go play with their hero in a signed act. That's not to say that Yngwie and I were all getting along or creating well together at the time. It was not a productive situation, but Steeler has managed somehow to survive all those decades and twists and turns to perform live at Keelfest in 2019 in Columbus, Ohio, the Steeler reunion. After 34 years of not playing together, Rick Fox and I, with Mitch Perry on guitar, who replaced Yngwie in that Steeler lineup, to play together and to do those Steeler songs live on stage at Keelfest in Columbus, Ohio. That was a huge exclamation point on the Steeler legacy, and I hope we get to do it again, man. I'm up for it if COVID-19 and all the other factors that are in play in our future in the music business will let me do that again, man. I'll book Keelfest wherever I possibly can. It was a great event and a great time and a great way to celebrate the legacy of Steeler, Keel, and my new project, the Ron Keel Band. Really not new now after 7 years of being with these guys in the Ron Keel Band. It's not a new band. We've probably done a lot to stake our claim and show everyone what I'm all about and what I do now with the Ron Keel Band. But Keelfest was a great event, man. Steeler, for the first time live on stage after 34 years. Great memories and great times, and I'm very thankful for that. Let's do it again.
Well, I did want to talk a little bit about the new album that came out this past year on High Vol Music, and like you've got a really good partnership with Bill Chavis and his crew there. Can you tell us? That seems like it got a really good response over this past year.
Well, I am really thankful to be releasing new music and to be an artist on High Vol Music. Bill Chavis and I have known each other for 20 years now, and I'm a firm believer in having the label behind you, an infrastructure that can really facilitate what an artist does. a lot of artists are do-it-yourself acts now, and I did that with Metal Cowboy in 2014. I released the album on my own and actually made some serious money on that project, but there's no substitute for having someone like Bill Chavis and High Vol Music behind you and with you and beside you. We're very thankful for entering into that relationship with High Vol Music and releasing South by South Dakota, which was an introductory project for us. We'd already had the album pretty much in the can and wanted to move forward with our relationship with Bill, and that was a great way to get the ball rolling. But we're excited now to release our next album, and I could probably unleash the title on the Decibel Geek podcast.
Cool, we get the exclusive.
It's called Long Hard Night on High Vol Music, the new album from Ron Keel Band, coming later this year. I hope. We are writing furiously right now, and I am in serious songwriting mode and just trying to create music. You know, a lot of my friends and peers in the business spent the COVID-19 pandemic of 2020 sitting back in their houses, in their home studios, writing songs and creating music. And I did not do that. I wish I had. I did 400 interviews last year. I released 4 albums last year, 5 music videos, tons of promotion, marketing. My Patreon page is certainly an obsession with me, and that is a full-time job at patreon.com/Ron Keel, where I interact with my fans on a daily basis, and they pay a $6.99 per month subscription fee to really be a part of the inner circle, and they've kept me alive through that whole pandemic. But I did not write a song in 2020. I'm the one. I have friends who I wrote 3 albums last year because I was just sitting around on my ass. I did not have a day off. I intended on taking Christmas Day off. It didn't happen. So I did not have a day off all year long. I did not write a song all year. But right now, that's where I'm at. I am absolutely immersed in the songwriting process and pouring out all these ideas that are pent up within me, and not listening to new music right now. The radio show's on hiatus, and I'm not watching TV with the sound on. I watched the Super Bowl with the sound muted. I am not listening to anything else on the radio or on TV.
Wow.
Totally immersed in writing songs and creating the new album. I don't know how many more albums I have left in me, but I want to make sure the next one is the best. And if you're looking for a pinnacle, that's what I'm looking for too, man. I'm looking for the next challenge, the next mountain to climb, the next song, the next album, the next gig. And there's a lot of gigs on the calendar this summer as well, with the Ron Keel Band touring coast to coast with the Rock Across America tour. So lots to look forward to in 2021.
Right on. You've been staying busy.
Yeah, I do stay busy, man. It's an obsession with me. It really is. As I get older and the clock keeps turning, I realize that there's more behind me than there is in front of me, and I want to make sure that I finish my to-do list before, I want to live it up before I lay it down, man. So I am obsessed, and I am working extremely hard to continue creating, entertaining people, do what I love to do while I still can. I still feel like I'm on the top of my game. I admire people like Sammy Hagar, Steven Tyler, Rob Halford, that are considerably even older than I am, and they're still delivering the goods. No pun intended. I want to do that for the next 10 years as well, and follow in the footsteps of my heroes, like I always have, man. Those guys were my heroes in the 70s. Sammy, Steven Tyler, Rob Halford, those guys were my heroes in the 70s. They're still my heroes, and they're still singing great and performing great, and I want to do the same thing they're doing.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I really love how interactive you are with your fans, because and there's a lot of artists that don't go that much of a deep dive into the interaction with the fans. I wish more artists took a cue from you, because it's really something. You're real prolific with keeping your fans updated on stuff and getting content out to them, and then obviously all the interviews with the radio show and the podcast this past year. So it's you're definitely one of the most prolific artists that I follow.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you recognizing that and mentioning it. I appreciate those people, man. the people that subscribe to all access at patreon.com/Ron Keel, they're paying a monthly fee of $6.99, and I believe they deserve the best of what I've got. Everything that I can do for them and with them, that's an interactive experience. And I understand that it becomes overwhelming at times. I literally, guys, I have probably 50,000 emails that are unanswered, that there's no way I can get to them all. There's no way I can answer every message, every Facebook message or Twitter message or Patreon message. The Patreons come first. That's my priority, but I enjoy that interaction with those people. And at one time, it's cool to realize that at one time I sold 90,000 albums in 1 week in January of 1985. 90,000 people bought the Right to Rock album that week. And I know those days are gone. But if I can just have 900 Patreon subscribers right now that want my time and enjoy what I'm doing and understand what I'm about, then I'll give them everything I got, man. And a lot of these fans, there are different schools of fans on the Patreon site. There are the old school Keelaholics from back in the 80s who grew up with Right to Rock and Late on the Law and the 87 Somebody's Waiting album and Final Frontier. Then there are new fans that are in their 20s. A lot of young people that they don't really know or care about Keel,
right,
or Steeler. They're into Ron Keel and Ron Keel Band, and my message and my music touches them on a certain level, and I appreciate all of them. Everybody that's been with me from the 80s on, and I understand that it's been a long and winding road. I have not been consistent, but when I was growing up, I didn't hear or see or feel the prejudice around different styles of music. I didn't understand there was a difference, man. I just grew up ignorant, I guess. I thought classical music or the blues or jazz or Motown or hard rock or the Beatles, or I thought it was all cool, man. Mm-hmm. I didn't really realize that you had to define yourself as being part of one or the other. And I never did. I got into hard rock and metal because it satisfied an urge within me. It gave me true joy to get on the stage and dress up and do my hair and put my fists in the air and scream my guts out, man. It was a blast. It is still a blast.
Yeah.
But there are so many other textures, so many other items on the menu that I'd like to try. I'd like to try this or try that. And that's not saying I'm going to do a jazz album or a blues album, but there are elements of all those things in the music that I do now that I've done for the last 20 years. My band plays the Right to Rock back to back with the Willie Nelson classic, Mamas Don't Let Your Babies Grow Up to Be Cowboys. We do that live back to back, and it works like a charm. It makes total sense. And to me, I never believed in prejudice of any kind, and just like the Paul Stanley thing, I know we're Kiss geeks here at the Decibel Geek podcast. We're Kiss fans, and to see Paul Stanley doing the Motown thing, I think it's cool as hell, man. And I totally applaud him, and he is expressing himself. He's investing in his heart and his money and his talent into something that means a lot to him. And you like it or not, take it or leave it. It's like any item on the menu. You don't have to order it.
Sure.
The fact that I sold 3 million records means there are billions of people who don't like what I do. I'm cool with that.
Yeah. Well, and I also want to thank you for, the support you've given for, music podcasting, because, you're now part of the community. But I remember when you were just getting started in it. And then when you found out about Rocknpod, you've always been a big champion of music podcasting and what we do at the expo. So I do appreciate that.
Well, thank you, man. And I have embraced that more and more over the last few years, because I started hosting my own radio show in 2012. And it was, quote, radio. Well, Ron's got a podcast. No, it's not a podcast. It's a radio show. All right. And I was like, no, it's not a podcast. What's a pod? I don't even have a pod. What's a podcast? I don't even know what that is. It's a radio show. We play music and we're on the radio.
Right.
And I went on to do live radio as the number one voice in the number one rock station in Sioux Falls, South Dakota for a couple of years at K-Bed 94.5 FM. And now I really embrace the podcast format because it is the platform of the present and hopefully the future, because people like Mitch LaFon, Mark Striegel, Decibel Geek, Jason Bakken,
good old Baco.
So many of my friends in the podcasting industry have made such a big difference. And you know what really changed my mind was getting into some of the podcasts and downloading them for the long road trips or airplane flights, and getting to know the artists that they're interviewing. And I have become huge friends and huge fans with some of these artists because I heard their interview on a podcast, something you can't get on the radio. During the radio show, when I was doing FM radio, broadcast terrestrial radio, you can't have anybody on for more than 6 minutes.
Right.
And that was part of the deal. It was, get them on, get them off, get the bullet points and get them out of there and get on to the next song or the next commercial. With a podcast format, I can talk to my heroes and people that I want to speak with and hear their stories. And I listened to some podcasts from Mitch LaFon, once again, one of the best in our business, Eddie Trunk, Mark Striegel with Talking Metal, and you guys, Decibel Geek. And listening to the podcast, I got to know some of the artists, and I decided that I like these guys. I want to hear what they're doing, and I want to buy their records. And I am officially a podcast junkie. I listen to probably 4 or 5 a day, mostly spoken word interviews at the gym in the morning. And before I go to bed at night, listening to podcasts and interviews. And it is the format of the present and hopefully the future. And that gave me the green light to go ahead and launch the Ron Keel podcast, which is now on Spotify, Amazon, Google, iTunes, all that, where I just literally, it's the easiest gig that I do. I just air the entire unedited, uncensored interview with my rock star friends or authors, celebrities, industry insiders, and I'll air the unedited, uncensored interview so that the audience and the fans can just hear the conversation. And it's working, and I really enjoy that opportunity to share those conversations with the public. So the radio show is great because I get to play new music and I get to promote my favorite artists and kind of still do the quote DJ thing. But the podcast, man, there's power, power in the podcast, and you guys are doing the right thing. I appreciate you having me on, and I'm glad to be a part of your podcast this week. And hopefully we still have some listeners after, I don't know, what is it, 43 minutes and 32 seconds deep. I appreciate the opportunity, and I'm willing to go the extra mile if you guys have more questions, but I don't want to wear everybody out. I'm just glad to be a part of this.
Right on. We just thought it'd be cool to have you on because we just announced that you're going to be back at Rocknpod this year, the return of Rocknpod and the return of Ron Keel to Nashville, Tennessee. And we just want to spread the word and let everybody know, the tickets are available, the hotel rooms are available, and we're kicking it off. We're bringing everything back. This is going to be the kickoff party where everybody can start going out and doing stuff again.
It is an amazing event. Nashville Rocknpod Expo. It's not Rock and Ron. It's not Ron and Pod. It's Rocknpod. The Nashville Rocknpod Expo.com. One of the coolest events I've done in recent years, and I can't wait to get back. August 6th through 8th at the Hilton in Nashville at the Airport Hilton. An amazing opportunity to work with some of the other artists on the bill and some of the other podcasters and broadcasters and be a part of the panels. And hopefully they'll let me sing at the pre-party.
Oh, of course. We're looking at doing some acoustic stuff in between panels at the expo too. I might want to see if you'd be interested in doing some of that too. But
no, I'm always interested in singing and entertaining people, man. I'm in. Sign me up.
now I don't know where I'm going to find a hot tub and Coors Light for you and Baco. And then there's also this talk about chili cook-offs and stuff going on. So you guys are giving me a lot of stuff to work with here.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, Baco wants to have a chili cook-off with me with the Cobras and Fire podcast. Love those guys. Jason Bakken is a dear friend and a good guy, and we'll find a hot tub and we can have a chili cook-off. I think we're going to be pretty busy though, taking care of our fans, our fellow podcasters and broadcasters. So maybe we'll have to order out some chili from the takeout diner down the street, but there's lots of good food in Nashville, man. I can't wait.
Well, maybe I'll just put a hot tub in the middle of the expo floor and just confuse people.
Yeah. I don't think we have that in the budget. If you got that in the budget, then we need to talk.
No, I don't have that kind of budget.
If you want to interview Ron Keel, you got to get in the hot tub.
Too funny.
No, I am there for the fans and the other podcasters and broadcasters, and looking forward to working my ass off all weekend long at Nashville Rocknpod 2021, August 6th through 8th. NashvilleRocknpod.com.
And all things Ron Keel at ronkeel.com, right?
ronkeel.com. That's my one-stop shop. I know that everybody has multiple social media outlets, Facebook, Twitter, etc., but you can find all my stuff at ronkeel.com.
Very cool.
Nice.
Well, thanks for coming on tonight, and I will send you a link when this comes out, and excited to see you in August, my friend.
I appreciate it. Looking forward to seeing you guys. Thanks for having me on.
All right, take care.
Awesome. Thanks, Ron.
Yeah!